Welcome everybody to my stream on Wednesday, September 28th, 2016. It's Weird Wednesday, my new name for the unusual opening stream that I'm going to do once a week. Our thematic blitz stream. Every Wednesday, it's the third edition. And hopefully this week we'll have better luck uploading this stream to YouTube. Because it hasn't worked in the past couple weeks for some reason, maybe because of the name. What's up, Booker Smith? Good to see you. I have challenges from Plucro, who was here waiting before we were even started. You, Booker Smith, I just noticed. And you're challenging me to chess 960, but we've got regular chess today because we are playing unusual openings. So I'm going to ask you to, if you want to take part, I'm going to ask you to re-challenge me to regular chess, if you would. 7-3. We're not going to play chess 960. We're going to randomize the game a different way today by playing unusual openings. Sean Shaw is here too. And yesterday we lost Sean Shaw in the middle of the opening in a very interesting position. Unfortunately, Sean Shaw, I don't know. I would think that you in Iceland would have like the best internet in the world or something. But you've been struggling lately. Maybe with the Wi-Fi or something. But that was an interesting game, Sean Shaw. We had 12 or 13 moves or something, like, really. You played a new move, I think, knight b5, and it's kind of cool. I immediately made a small inaccuracy when you played that, so that was very interesting. We'll get back to that discussion maybe tomorrow or Friday. We are streaming Monday to Friday, Blitz and Classical. Today is our one thematic day, and then Sunday I do a simul in the evening, 6 p.m. Central European summertime. So let's get started. I'm going to play openings I don't normally play. It doesn't have to be something extremely bad or extremely absurd, just something different from my normal repertoire that's a little bit maybe unorthodox. So we can also encourage you guys to play along and play unusual openings if you get the chance, if I don't beat you to it. So we're going to get started. Plucro is first. And we've only played once or twice with Plucro. Yeah, one game. It was 5-3, and he was winning. And that was the same. It was a Wednesday in the last 2 weeks. It was a Latvian gambit. I'm gonna play maybe e4 against Plucro. I didn't like the way the Latvian gambit went down last time. It was a very rare variation, actually. He played e4, I played e5, he played knight f3, I played f5, and Plucro played knight c3, which, if you've ever read a book on the Latvian gambit, there's not a lot of coverage of the move knight c3, and it's kind of weird because looking at it in retrospect, knight c3 seems like a very kind of reasonable and somewhat dangerous move. So I'm surprised that, I'm honestly surprised we don't see that more often. I kind of feel like obliged to play the King's Gambit when given the chance. Yeah, I remember that. That's what I was just talking about, Plucro. I don't know if you're listening to the stream. Probably you are, but yeah, the first Latvian Gambit we had on the stream. Okay, so now the Albin, I want to say Albin because it looks like the Albin, but the Falkbeer counter gambit, named after the master Ernst Falkbeer. Okay, so d5, I guess you could play some weird move like knight c3 here, but for the most part, everybody takes on d5. I don't really have an option there. Now an interesting possibility for black would be, what was I going to say? Taking on f4. Everybody thinks they have to play the Falkbeer like a macho, basically with e4 or some really aggressive c6, gambiting a pawn. Yeah, with a delay. Excuse me, with a delay. There is a small delay in the audio. But I think it's quite interesting for black to take on f4 as well. This is a fairly fast game. He plays 5-3, so I have to kind of play a little bit quicker. What's coming to mind here? Like, There's a famous Morphy game, d3, bishop b4, bishop d2, e3, with massive advantage to black. I don't remember who he was playing against. But so white doesn't have a lot of time. I mean, I think queen e2 might be a move here. But d3 is definitely the main line. It's been years since I looked at this, so you're probably going to take me out because I'm just not very well prepared. I should really brush up before the stream starts. Yeah, so this looks like kind of main line. Bishop e4, pawn takes e4. Trying to remember and not waste all my time. I have a 3-second increment. This is the fastest time control I do play on the stream. So bishop d2 is too slow. Queen e2 is probably a move again, but I don't like it as much here as in the previous position, honestly. Alright. Somewhere deep in my memory banks, I know this is probably the main line, but I've only played like one game with black and some games with white and blitz. That's the like expanse of, I think that's about the expanse of my practical experience. I mean, I've played some blitz games probably with both sides, and maybe one tournament game one time with black, a very obscure tournament game, where I think I lost with a guy who was lower rated than me, but I did not know the theory very deeply. Yeah, you usually play e takes f. Right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. E takes f, it's a good move order. Yeah, I think it's a very good move order for black. Stiff neck can be painful. Yeah, you're making me have one, Cha-Cha, if you keep saying that. What, yeah, I do have. Now the psychosomatic stuff starts. So knight takes e4. I guess queen d4. Oh boy. Queen d4, castles, knight f3. No, he can't do queen d4 castles. So what is the move there after queen d4? Queen e7? It must be queen d4, queen e7. Queen e2. Somehow I'm not really sure where I'm at here. Queen d4, queen e7. Bishop e3. Looks kind of logical, but then I don't know about this. I don't know what I'm doing. Black has the initiative here for a pawn, and this is probably some theory he took on c3. Wait, is that a blunder or a good move? So queen takes e4 check. What the heck is going on? What is going on here? Queen takes e4 check. King d7. Bishop b5 check. Is this some obscure line? It must be some obscure line. Queen takes e4 check. King d7. Oh my god. Queen f5 check. King d6. Plukro, what kind of secrets do you have there? Queen takes e4 check. King d7. Queen takes e4 check is illegal. It's illegal. I'm really out of my mind. Okay. Gotta be creative. We try to play some illegal moves while we're at it. I don't know. That's how unfamiliar I am. I'm trying to play illegal moves. Unbelievable. Even with delay, you can see I'm trying to play queen takes e4 check. Seriously analyzing queen takes e4 check. I am in check and my queen is attacked. That's the secret to becoming an international master. You just have to, like, keep an open mind and even analyze illegal moves. Okay, so this is obviously some kind of theory. Queen h4 check. I may be nearly bust out here. Alright, well, maybe we can take the initiative by sacking the exchange or something. I don't really see another option. Can't believe I was trying to play an illegal move. Queen takes g7, knight takes h1 check. Why you can't take there on g3? And there's going to be a lot of center pawn loss on this game. I can promise you that. All right, king safety is of the utmost importance here. What am I going to do? All right, we've got to develop quickly. I'm not really sure why Plucro can't take on g3 there. I probably missed that I was in check again or something. I don't know that he was in check. But these open games are very, very dangerous, very sharp. Welcome, Sean Shaw. Welcome, everybody. Gladys Troll. Saroche, I didn't even see you there. You got the purple letters today. Very smooth and quiet. Yeah, this looks like still black has good compensation to me. I have a lot of weaknesses. I have the bishop pair, but the weaknesses seem pretty relevant here. Bishop b5 check might be overrated. I could actually play queen e5 there and sack a pawn back to trade queens, but not sure if I want to drop the c3 and probably the d5 pawns just to trade queens. A little surprised that he didn't castle right away. But this is pure tactics. And c5 now. Well, now I talked about it. Queen e5. Just have to play blitz here. I gotta try to hold on to that forward pawn at d5. I mean, I think I can afford to give that guy up. He did not take it. Wow. All right. So knight takes c3. Maybe he didn't like bishop takes c5. I'm just not used to playing, you know, such a absurdly open type game. Not familiar with the themes here. King f2. So we could have played king d2 as well. a4 sort of debatable, but I do trap the knight. He could have played bishop d7. I guess he had to play bishop d7 last move to avoid losing a knight. Bishop d7, a5, and I guess white is better with the center. But Plucro, I think you were clearly better. I probably misplayed the opening. But at least we had fun. It seemed like I made logical moves, but I think after queen h4 check, I guess black is better. I mean, maybe I can sack the exchange somehow. That was my plan. It's not really a plan, it's just sort of a desperate thing to do. Sean Shaw is black. I'm going to try to play maybe something a little bit different. The problem is, I mean, if Sean Shaw does something... Okay, I was going to say, how do you play something unorthodox here? I have to be a little creative, Sean Shaw, with the kind of hyper modern move. So to be unorthodox, we have to be a little bit creative. I was kind of hoping for either d5 or maybe knight f6 there. Let's see what we can come up with. We have more time here, so I think it's harder to play unorthodox openings with d4 than it is with e4. And now it's really hard because he's playing this hyper modern type thing. Let's see what we can do. Knight c3, kind of Veresov type opening. Would normally not be the choice here. I would play either e4 or maybe knight f3. Let's see what we can get. Why didn't you take the g7 pawn with your queen? Am I missing something? Good question. There were two positions, I guess, where I could have taken on g7. Just getting low on time, and I didn't want to lose my coordination, but probably it's good. Felt kind of like I wanted my queen in the center. Okay, so we go into a French. Let's see what we can do with this. If we can find something a little bit off the beaten track here. We're in a mainline position at the moment, but we can get a kind of unorthodox opening by playing a sideline. What sort of sideline can we try here? Yeah, to Chaos, I'll call him. I think I could have probably taken on g7, but I was kind of in a state of panic because I had a lost position, and I tried to make an illegal move earlier. So I was trying to just make really simple, safe moves instead of launching into complications. But queen takes g7 very well may have been just clearly a great move. Alright, so knight f6, and now how can I get things into kind of unorthodox territory? F3 would be interesting. Let's try that. Kind of fantasy variation against the French. Also could be a kind of Veresov. This is definitely not an orthodox move, F3. The main lines are E5 and bishop G5 and even pawn takes pawn. But I don't like pawn takes pawn. I mean, with the knight on F6, it's one thing with the bishop on B4. I think there's some justifications of pawn takes pawn, but here, so Shancha making it kind of difficult for me to play an unorthodox setup. I think it would be easier against the winnower. There's a number of moves I could play against the winnower, you know, like even bishop d2 or bishop d3, knight e2. But against knight f6, he makes life a little difficult. I'm having to invent something, basically. F3, which probably exists in theory, but it's not at all a main continuation. Just play e4 and you transpose e4. That's what I did. But the French is hard. I have to play a kind of sideline. And against knight f6 particularly, what am I going to do? You know, so f3. Maybe you could play something like queen f3 there instead of f3. A kind of gambit. And then c5. This feels like it's definitely the most dynamic move. Now, I have to be wary of the dark squares. I think this is very, very weak diagonal for me. So, and also my pawn structure. e5 is illogical. I mean, if I play e5, it seems like I'm just playing a bad sort of, a bad kind of Steinitz variation. So we don't really want to do e5. We don't really want to do pawn takes pawn. I think by process of elimination, we can figure out what's not really good here. Black's probably equalized immediately with c5. This is definitely the best move against f3. Going against the dark squares. Play something like bishop to e3, just developing a piece. Don't really have another idea. Yeah, I think this is probably the most flexible option for white. Just play like tile and play standard until move 10. Then throw in those novelties. Yeah, the concept is to play a little earlier. I have to either play a weird move on move 1 or be pretty sure I can get it in the first several moves. The more hyper modern the opening is, the harder it is going to be for me to play some kind of unorthodox thing. I'm not going to play blatant, patently bad moves, though, to try to just make a weird position. That's not really the concept here. Okay, so now knight c6, again, putting more pressure on the center. It almost feels like a Sicilian after knight c6. Bishop to b5, I guess. Not really clear which of my bishops is good and which of my bishops is bad. Playing, it feels a little bit like some kind of setup where white would be playing. I know the bishop's not on g5, but something about it reminds me of the Trompowsky for some reason. With this particular pawn formation, g2, f3, e4, my bishop isn't that great. So you can argue for bishop b5. It's not clearly a great bishop if I have to trade it off. And knight coming to e2, queen d2 type development. I was actually planning on taking with the queen on d4 in most lines. And maybe that's much more active than taking with the bishop. We got Shansha out of book. Of course, I don't think he plays the French, so that's his way of playing an unorthodox opening. Playing e6. Queen a5, very active move. He's starting my e4 pawn here. So things could get kind of weird. I mean, I'm now feeling a lot of pressure at e4. I guess could play queen d2. Wasn't really the original intention. But if he's going to play queen a5, then maybe I need to play this to stop the pain on e4. Definitely not your average Veresov. That's the opening, I guess it's closest to that we've got here. Very strange sort of Veresov. d4, d5, knight c3. Like he played e6 against the Veresov, maybe. That doesn't even... Yeah, that makes sense. And then we transpose, but it's still going to be a French. It's still a French no matter what you do. You could go like d4, d5, knight c3, e6, f3, and reach some kind of weird Veresov. Queen d2 is a normal square in this position. And I think it's hard to say. I don't like a6 for black. I'm happy he played that because that's the kind of move that feels like a waste of time a little bit for black. It also makes sure that he can't get a bishop to a6. So I'm comfortable maybe getting a kind of blockade type position. We can maybe play some point to blockade the c5. If I could play b3, but I can't afford to weaken my structure here. Maybe takes on c5 is worth considering. We could also just simply develop. But if I play like knight to d4, pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, Actually looks okay. I'm on c6. I've got knight b3. Yeah, let's just develop a piece. Definitely more fundamental than taking on c5. And I don't know, he can play rook b8. There it is. But I don't think that I'm really worried about it so much. I do have to weaken my position. If I play b3, the dark squares are arguably weakened. What would Magnus do? Always have to ask yourself. What would Magnus do? Maybe b3 weakens the dark squares too much. Castle's queenside is possible, but it looks kind of risky. So I'm leaning against that. I mean, I'm leaning away from doing that. Maybe rook b1 is the sanest move here. But this a6 tempo loss with rook b8 kind of looks good now for black. Despite the bad bishop, everything else is really favorable about the whole position. I think black's position is looking good, except for that fact that the bishop on c8. You can't have everything, especially with black. Castling queenside is possible, but it looks very dangerous. So I'm going to avoid that possibility. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn on e4. If pawn takes d4, I take with the knight, I guess, because I have the hit on c6 with the family fork. And also knight b3 could be a really good defensive square for my knight, trying to blockade the c5 square. He went knight d7, which seems weird, He's just retreating from the center. Obviously, Shanshah may be looking for the c4 knight, and I get knight to c4, but it's kind of slow. So I guess I'll just castle. We don't really have a lot of time. So if you guys don't know, we're playing unusual openings today. We kind of struggled in this one. We had a King's Gambit in the first game, but this time we kind of struggled to get a legitimate unorthodox opening going on because Shanshah played e6 on move 1. I didn't really know what to do after d4 e6. Was it d4 e6? Yeah. So I played knight c3, which is not a common move, and we have a cross between the French and the Veresov. I think we'll call it hybrid French Veresov. What would Tal do? Okay, now he's retreating. But structurally, I'm looking to play this in a positional way with the 2 knights on the board. Try to keep the position kind of blocked, not to let it open up for the bishop on c8. Knight a4 is a possibility. I think he's basically thinking about just using his pawn center. Using his pawn center. This move, positionally, the aim here is try to trade our bad bishop and his good bishop and reach an ending where I have good knight against bad bishop, basically. So it's looking like a normal kind of French at this point, starting to look like a normal sort of French. Where he definitely has issues with the dark squared bishop. Good general chess philosophy. What I did there, when you have an opponent who has the bishop pair, you generally want to trade off that bishop pair if you have a bishop and knight, or something like a piece configuration we had here, piece distribution, whatever you want to call it. So I think white is slightly better. Really not sure about taking on c5 though. Not really sure this is the right idea. Play b4 here. Kind of double-edged. To play b4, he played f6. I was a little bit worried about pawn takes there, honestly. Pawn takes toward the center, obviously double-edged. The black king is not that safe after pawn takes f6. So it's a close game. Black still has issues with the dark squared bishop, or white squared bishop. And I like white a little bit, but it's like he's still pretty solid. And I don't think that black is by any means lost here. He may be slightly worse. Kind of looking for tactics. I'm going to run out of time if I think any longer. I'm trying to make tactics with knight takes d5 work, but it's not there. I basically played a bit, how to say, indecisively. Bishop e7 is a good move. Trying to get coordinated, but black's good now. He made vast improvements in his position. He got the bishop to a good square. Well, this move... Powerful bishop. He's like pinning me too. Kind of relieved he took on c3. I was a little bit worried about d3 there. You guys can imagine. Trying for tricks again. Rook f6. Not really sure what I'm doing here. Yes. It should kind of feels like it should be a draw. Realistically. Jesus. Really made me work for this, man. That was a fantastic endgame. Just barely held on. You probably have a win somewhere, I don't know. But I just barely managed to draw. Lonely Master, good game, Shansha. Lonely Master's white. We're in Weird Wednesday, Unusual Openings Day. So if you don't do something weird, I will. That was a very, very tough game. Good thing my mouse didn't freeze. I still have to use our donation money here to buy a new mouse. We have a mouse that tends to freeze on me sometimes, so I'm very fortunate it decided to be. Alright, we're going to play f5. We haven't played the Dutch, and for me, this is an unorthodox opening. For many people, it may be their standard choice, and the Dutch is perfectly sound. So unorthodox openings are kind of like open to interpretation. I mean, for some people, it may be a mainline opening. For me, it's not. So I would also consider playing the Birds opening to be unorthodox, Jeroen. I kind of philosophically feel like the Dutch is more correct than the Birds opening because white plays d4 and there's a little bit of a weakening of the e4 square. So somehow having played d4, f5 feels a little more correct. But when you play f4 just voluntarily with white, it almost feels less correct than playing the Dutch. No respect for the bird. -10 positions. I don't think it was -10, was it? Could have been. Well, if it's a win, it's a win, and maybe -10 if you had like a way to like make a queen in that ending. I mean, it's -10. It doesn't mean it was easy to see it. I mean, there's like one move that leads to -10 maybe, and you just didn't find it. Yeah, only way to save the game. The rook pawns are always problematic. Okay, so we're gonna play normal Dutch. I kind of was hoping for the Stoughton Gambit, but If I'm white and somebody plays the Dutch, we will go with Staunton, just so you guys know. If anybody wants to play the Dutch against me, if Shansha had played f5 on move 1, which he could have because he does play the Dutch, I probably would have gone with the Staunton Gambit. This is called a bird for black too. No. I mean, bird is an opening for white, and that's f4. The Dutch is the Dutch, man. f5. I think it's more correct than playing f4 on move 1. And if you face the bird like f4 and you're black, you can play e5. This gambit, the Fromm's gambit with e5, is very interesting. So Lonely Master plays knight c3, which is not such a common move. Alright. I'm going to play the Leningrad with g6. Try to play the Leningrad. I think that the Leningrad is, no doubt, the best Dutch. Nothing wrong with the modern Stonewall as Shansha plays, but now all due respect to Simon Williams trying to, his whole life, make the poor, whatever it's called, Dutch with d6 and classical Dutch or whatever, make it work. It's an uphill struggle. The Leningrad Dutch is really the best Dutch. So here, the particular move order, though, I'm not really expert with, of course. Not playing the Dutch much. Always wanted to play the Dutch. I even had a book on the Dutch, started studying it at one point. But for some reason, I started studying the Dutch. And I don't, this is years ago. I mean, like 15 years or more, maybe 20 years ago. I was a master. I was thinking about playing the Dutch. But somehow the whole concept, the whole project got sidetracked, and I'm not really sure how. We were in the process of starting to study the Dutch, starting to learn the theory of the Leningrad Dutch, and somehow I just didn't get around to it or gave up on the project. Opening Nakamura plays. Yeah, I think Hikaru does play the Dutch. Hikaru, like a very modern player, he plays basically everything. Alright, so now we enter into the main line. Queen e8 is the modern line. Older variations are c6, which is fine, and also knight c6, which leads to kind of strange positions after d5, knight e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5. Those lines I always found difficult to play for both sides, honestly. So there was a funny event when I played in my last tournament in June in Zalakaros, Hungary. A friend of mine, Brian Smith, who's a GM from the US, played this Hungarian IM, this old guy. And I saw it, and it was like Smith was playing the Dutch, and I was thinking, oh man, this guy plays everything, And then after the game, he just crushed the guy, the solid old, like 2360 Hungarian IM. I was like, wow, that's amazing. He said, yeah, I never played the Dutch before in my life. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So he totally, he really like never played the Dutch before. He just played it and crushed this guy, ripped him apart. Because the guy just never suspected that Smith would play the Dutch. He played the Nimzo, Bogo Indian, it's a very solid type of repertoire, and maybe King's Indian, I don't know. But out of the blue, you play the Dutch and no one's expecting it. It can be a very dangerous sort of weapon. All right, I am very underprepared here in the theory of this variation. So I have played white, and I have had troubles with white in this line. Yeah, Simon Williams actually playing the Dutch against me 25 years ago. I mean, when he was a little kid in a Blitz tournament, I remember he played. He probably played it against me. We had like a 2-game Blitz match, some Blitz tournament in Hastings. So he was trying to play that classical Dutch all his life, not just something recent. It's kind of a pet opening for him since he was a kid. Alright, so knight d2 now. That move looks pretty unusual. Most commonly, white plays knight to d4 or rook b1. And sometimes I've seen people play bishop e3. Once I played a similar, like, bishop e3 type move against Kevin Spraggett. But I think that Spraggett played... I'm thinking that Spraggett played a weird move against me, like bishop to d7 or something really unusual. So knight to d2, and then I guess I just continue with my normal type of plan here. Is white thinking about playing e4 or f4? Very possibly. Maybe I should strike in the center. I can't really play e5. Pawn takes pawn. I can't take with the bishop. I'd have to take with the queen. Or maybe play knight c5 there. We could play e5. And then e5. Pawn takes pawn, knight c5. I have the strange feeling that both Lonely Master and I are not really... I have the feeling it's kind of mutual, like both of us are not really very knowledgeable of this position, because his move knight d2 looks pretty unusual, and I know that I'm not that comfortable here. I can draw upon some kind of King's Indian knowledge, basic knowledge about playing structures like this from the King's Indian, and maybe from playing black against the English. It's something like a closed English. You could take with the queen on e6. It's a bit of a weird move. So I think I'm going to take with the knight. Knight c5, knight takes e6. This also maybe discourages e4 type ideas. Gets my knight to the center. Keeps b7 protected. And I can take with this and keep c7 protected if need be. But I'm not sure if this is really good or not. He could play the interesting move knight to d5 when I take on e6. I didn't see anything special for white in that position. He's sort of neglected development with knight d2. So, but I'm sure that a Dutch Leningrad expert would be like, oh, Bill, you made a terrible inaccuracy. I mean, you should never play e5 there. Everybody knows that after knight d2, you play bishop d7 and a5. Or, I don't know the subtleties of the variation. I just know general ideas. But it's funny that I don't really remember why I stopped the whole project of learning to play the Dutch with black. It's interesting. I mean, I remember there was a time when I was trying to play it in Blitz. But I'm not sure it ever got to the stage where it actually would undergo practical testing. Alright, so now e4. Sometimes in such situations you can sack a pawn with f4 and knight h5. I mean, it's a really interesting concept here. f4. To just keep him kind of bottled up. It's probably too risky. But I'm inclined to take some risk here. I would be maybe more confident if I got in g5 and had the queen coming over there. But positional pawn sacrifice, positional sort of sacrifice with f4. Very common to the Dutch. I don't know if this is good. I don't think I have really that much force behind it to build up necessarily a big attack. The obvious move would have been to play pawn takes pawn, knight takes, knight takes, knight takes, knight takes, bishop takes, but then I have a problem. I can't recapture on e6 without hanging a pawn or something. Although I guess that would have been the way to play the position. Basically take 3 times on e4 and then play bishop takes e6. After bishop takes b7, I feel like white's better. So that's why we decided to change tack here, and now knight takes e6. Knight takes e6, migrating toward the king's side. Well, you only live once. We're going to go for this. Our piece is kind of coordinated toward the king's side, and both sides with very little time. It should be... Normally I say don't create complications when you don't have much time, but in this case my opponent has even less time than me. So you could argue the complications favor me. If I have 2 minutes, he has 1. Simon likes to get an e5, e4 in the Dutch. Well, he wouldn't let me. I tried to get away with it, but I think I prefer e5. Yeah, e5, e4, you can blot out the bishop on g2. But the Dutch is one of those openings, that's what I should say. You know, a player like Simon can get away with it because I think you really have to study it your whole life, more or less. I mean, is this the way to do this, like the King's Indian? King's Indian style? With knight h5, guarding f4. Can evict the knight on d5 with c6. Definitely, there is a parallel. He played bishop h3. That's a really obvious but possibly mistaken idea. Let's play bishop e5. Maybe my idea is mistaken, but it looks like his king side looks really weak. I mean, if he trades off the bishop on h5, do you really want to do that? Are you going to trade your king side protection off for the knight? Now he changes plan and plays this move. Totally different plan. This is like a kind of cheapo against c7. We have f4 is just massively overprotected. Couldn't protect f4. I don't think I've ever had so much control over f4. And now try to get him off, get him out of there. It looks like black is better. Feels like a King's Indian. G4. Oh, I hang a piece if I go there? Yikes. I want to play f3, but he has bishop takes g5. It's very disturbing. Knight h3 check. So we just have to retreat. Black, now he defends the c4 pawn. Very alert move, king g2. Unbelievable. Hanging a pawn finally gives me something. If he hadn't played king g2, if he had played king h1 or something instead, I would have been winning easily. Bishop a5. Okay. I'd rather not weaken my pawn structure. Maybe I will anyway. Wow, he's just all over me. Knight c5. Oh man, we just both blundered. Terrible move. He was actually on that pawn twice. Or 3 times on f4. He could have just won a pawn there. This game is not really the best played game we've ever seen. Great defense by Lonely Master. I'm going to live with that backward pawn, I guess. Man. Such a good defender with such little time. Threatening rook b2. Oh, man, I don't know about this. Yeah, he takes on c5, rook b2. Look very dangerous. It's the second pawn though. I need to guard that. Whoa, there's a check. Lonely Master seems very fond of this increment. Very attuned. Stay on that pawn. I feel like I've been worse down a pawn the whole game. He's so fast. It's just like... literally felt like I was worse. Holy crap. What? Desperate times call for desperate measures. I guess we're just lost here. Master of Increment. Lonely Master. Yeah, you were defending pretty well that game. Alright, congratulations. Nice win in the 70 move increment game. Man, I just got a little bit tired there in that one. Yeah, we were just totally winning before, but he defended extremely well. I played the English here, and we're going to try something unusual. So I'm glad you played this move. It gives us a chance to play a kind of rare variation, knight f3. It's a line that's played by a young and very strong grandmaster, Rachmanov. Bishop d6 is not a move I'm familiar with. It's been a while since we played the 70 move game, but really nice endgame technique from Lonely Master there. He's got he's very comfortable in any kind of tactical position that I've noted before. Bishop to d6, not really a good move for black probably, but playable perhaps. I could play c5. So anyway, the main idea here is after knight f3, e4, and white plays knight to d4. So it's kind of like a Nimzovich variation of the Sicilian with colors reversed with an extra tempo. But bishop d6 is quite unorthodox too. Yeah, so we really butchered the ending against Lonely Master there. Happens a lot when you're frustrated and you think you were like winning a game, but you just can't win. And then you start to play badly at the end. I let his king just walk into the position. The entire game he played like he was better, down a pawn, very, very quickly, very methodically. You know, the same amount of time, every single move, bang, 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 bang. You know, the increment, and it was difficult to play. But I shouldn't lose. I shouldn't lose a pawn up ending. My pawns were a little bit extended, and that's something I'm not really used to. You know, playing the Dutch, I have this joke that I have the joke basically that like all rook endgames for black are lost in the Dutch, because if a rook gets on the 7th rank, I mean this game was perfect evidence of that theory that I have about the Dutch, that you know all rook endgames are lost because like black gets or white gets a rook on the 7th rank or something, and all your 7th rank is open because you've pushed your f pawn and your g pawn up. So it's kind of funny that, I mean, I'm aware of that possibility. And that really was the case in that game, that I ended up at the end basically losing because my pawns were so far extended. And that's something that I'm not really used to. Although we sometimes get it in the King's Indian. I normally don't play variations where I'm necessarily like going into the classical King's Indian and going into variations where you push all the pawns up on the king's side. So I don't get that kind of position that often where my kingside pawns are all overextended. But I think we see the strength of Lonely Master. He's very, very good in kind of tactical situations. He wanted to grind me down in opposite color bishop end games. Now he's got his rook end game, so he's a very very tactical minded player and good in rook and pawn end games, obviously. Bishop g2, and I don't know, I could have tried c5 at some point, but I don't really know if I want to trade and simplify the position, because honestly the bishop on d6 is badly placed here, and I'm not sure, I mean, alleviating the tension with c5, I feel it almost like helps black in a way. I mean, although it's a good trade for me, pawn for pawn, I feel like it kind of helps black to alleviate that pawn, but it probably doesn't make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. Now d4 looks legitimately strong, because although c6 seems normal, like Kopak system or whatever, you can't really support the pawn, and now I'm going to trade the d pawn for the e pawn instead of the c pawn, because the resulting structure leaves me better on the half open file, with black having backward backwardness on the half open file. Um, really long game though. I mean, we don't often get 70 move games. I was definitely like kind of just tired of that one at the end. Like, let's get it over with. Maybe I should have offered a draw a little bit earlier, but I don't recall that he likes accepting draws. He wouldn't even accept draws, and he was very reluctant to accept a draw in the drawn rook and pawn or opposite colored bishop ending before. So if I know that my opponent doesn't really like draw offers or accepting draws, I'll get the message and just never offer a draw. We had a game with somebody, who was it, yesterday? Oh yeah, yesterday against Hisitnuns, where I offered a draw and he declined. And then I kind of wanted to offer a draw a little bit later, but I didn't do that. It's really not good etiquette to offer multiple draws to the same opponent. A lot of people don't know that, but it's kind of considered rude, especially over the board. And Booker Smith hung a piece here. We were trying to undermine that bishop. We achieved that. So I didn't want to offer a second draw to Hisitnuns yesterday, even though the position changed a little bit. I wanted to wait, and then he actually made some bad moves and lost the game. But that, I just wanted to illustrate that concept, about offering draws. Really the position should be different if you offer a draw for a second time in the same game. Should be quite a different position. If something changes, then it's okay to offer a draw for a second time. But I just I didn't want to offer a draw against Lonely Master, because he seems like he's a fighter. Although I am up a pawn, so I could have offered a draw up a pawn. He had a lot of compensation, and legitimately, maybe I wasn't winning at the end ever. I'm not sure. So second piece, though, Booker Smith is dropping pieces here. Well, this game is a little bit of like a kind of break from the first one, because the first one took a lot out of me. Booker Smith needs to concentrate on, just making sure your pieces are protected. So the Dutch kind of wasted me. The Dutch takes extra energy to play. I wanted to say, somebody mentioned Nakamura. I wanted to say, Hikaru plays it. Even Kamsky plays the Dutch, which is kind of weird to me. It's kind of like Hikaru playing the Queen's Gambit declined, Kamsky playing the Dutch, but he does that sometimes. Actually, he used it to win a game. Where was that? Last year. One big tournament I remember. Not coming to me now. Maybe not coming to me now where that was. Maybe Aeroflot. That was it. He did use it to win one game in Aeroflot last year, I remember, against some German GM like Falco Bindrich. But, okay, Bindrich is like 2,500 and Kamsky's 2,650 plus. So, but I think the Dutch is an opening that you need to play all your life to really master. And that's what I was getting to when I got distracted. That's what I wanted to say. It's just an opening that takes incredible amount of time to truly master. So, but I guess it's like anything else. You get what you put into something. I had a friend at the chess club in Boston where I played for years, and strong player who played the Alekhines defense. He played the Alekhines defense and the Dutch. And, I mean, you just can't get a more aggressive repertoire than that, basically. I mean, you've got to admire somebody who only plays Alekhines defense and Dutch. They're basically the two most aggressive openings that are physically possible to play against, respectively, like e4 and d4. So guys, we've got 6 challenges here. Weird Wednesday. Fortuit Folier, Hunt the King, WJM Alexandra, Son of Anarchy, ARX, and Kyria Kospez. Got an hour and 20 minutes. It seemed like the game with Lonely Master took an hour by itself. It's like literally. I guess I should just take on c6 there. I'm kind of hoping that black takes on d5, honestly, but we could just win a pawn or more with pawn takes pawn. if he takes on d5, we're getting knight d5 and threats of knight c7 and knight takes f6 check, winning all of his pieces. So it's almost better than winning this pawn, more or less. And then there's the consideration that his pieces aren't developed, and we can try to checkmate the king in this situation. So again, I'm like not really wanting to take on c6, but okay, whatever. We're up 2 pieces. We don't need to think too deeply about it. But I think you should always take your time. And the attitude of like, I'm winning, it doesn't matter what I do, is a bad one. And here, okay, I'm up 2 pieces. Yeah, whatever, man, just get the game over with, is probably what some people are thinking. But honestly, where do you draw the line? I lost a game to Huang Tang Tran once where I was up a rook. I was really, really pissed about it, and I even started to verbally attack her, why didn't you just resign? Because I was so upset after the game. But it's a case of that, where do you draw the line? I mean, you're up 2 pieces. Do you say, oh, I'm gonna bear down and really? There I had bishop f4, or do you when do you stop taking it lightly or start taking it lightly? It's dangerous, a rook up against a strong IM like I was against Huang Tang Tran. She had a queen on the board. There were some tricks, and I was just like, oh, whatever, I'll just win, and I lost. So here, you can't take any position too lightly. I think that's the best philosophy to have. Now I'd like to play for mate. Yeah, we'll just try to play for mate here. That's always the default, I guess. And that's playing for mate. Man, I hate when that pops up like that. What is going on? That is very annoying, the pop-up during the move. So we play for mate and get it. Alright. Well, Bookersmith, we don't get a lot of beginning players here, and I appreciate that you're brave enough to take us on. So don't give up. Keep plugging away. Keep trying to improve your game. And I appreciate that you're courageous, because most people who are low rated, like 1300, are afraid to play in the stream, and I think there's no shame in losing. So keep trying, man. The only way you're going to get better is to keep trying. Fortuit Folier is black now. Let's try to make sure we get a truly unorthodox opening here. I don't know if I want to play the birds opening. We had that. Let's play b3. Al-Yakin. Yeah, I'm doing this with a lot of names. I say Aronian sometimes, although I know the pronunciation is Aronian, and I'll say Alakine sometimes instead of Alakin. My Russian pronunciation of Al-Yakin is not really good, but it's just easier to say it kind of quickly. Fortuit Folier actually just lost the pawn on e5, so not really paying attention. Though it could be a gambit of some bizarre sort with knight g4. I don't know, but I don't think that you can get away with that here. It's looking a little early. But you could try it. I mean, knight c6 gains a tempo. You get quick development for a pawn. I think that black might get a tiny bit of compensation here. Black routinely not prepared for Weird Wednesday, routinely playing knight f6. Fortuit Folier invented a new gambit. Well, that's nothing. I mean, Lonely Master took me out down a pawn, so no problem, man. Yeah, pawn is not that big a deal. I'm not even sure philosophically and mathematically, is a pawn enough for it to be a winning position? If I look at the chess engine's analysis, usually for it to be a winning position, it seems like the chess engine has to be, or any chess engine, I'm not talking about just one, they have to be kind of crossing over the 1.5 centipawns, and one pawn is not 1.5 centipawns, so it makes you wonder, is one pawn really losing? I think in practice, a lot of people lose. They kind of give up hope, or they transpose to the wrong kind of ending when they're down a pawn. But if you're really smart about it, and you don't trade into like a knight ending or a king and pawn ending, there are many ways to save many positions down clear pawn. It's very possible you can give up a clear pawn, even against a top player, and still save the game. Of course, it doesn't help if it's like a central pawn. You would rather lose like an H pawn or an A pawn would be. Of course, most players, if they had to play with odds, pawn odds, would probably choose to lose the A pawn. I know there are a lot of these computer matches going on nowadays. I'm not really interested in it, but I know Hikaru and other people have played some top chess engines in matches with like material odds. And I guess giving up the A pawn would be the pawn you'd want to lose. Here you can say, okay, well, the E pawn, is giving him some open line for his pieces. So there's some advantage in losing the central pawn, in the sense that Fortuit Folier has a lot of mobility for the pieces here. The E pawn being gone kind of allows for that. Rook E1 is okay. I want to make sure that there's no sacrifices on E3. This is a lot like I'm playing against a London system type formation, where if you look at the London system, or the London system reversed, or whatever you want to call it, a lot of times this open line will be the London system versus the hedgehog type formation is what this is basically. A lot of times there'll be sort of piece sacrifices on E3. So Rook E1 also frees up, it's like a hedgehog, it frees up the F1 square for not only my bishop but my knight as well. Welcome everybody. Thirsty. It's not easy playing unorthodox openings. I can't do anything on autopilot. When I'm playing my normal openings, I can go to a kind of autopilot state where I know those kind of positions so well that it's very second nature, and your intuition can even almost play the game for you practically. Okay, a lot of you guys are probably like, why not bishop takes F6? Yeah, I probably should do it. I don't think it's a no-brainer, but that I'm up a pawn here. I will have some weaknesses on the dark squares, but yeah, you should do it. I mean, bishop takes F6. It obviously doesn't win material, but it trades, number one, trades material and damages black's pawn structure. Although he might have some counterattack along the G file. Somewhere deep in my subconscious, maybe something said, oh, look, you don't need to open up a half-open file against your king. You've lost games like that before, don't do that. So Fortuit Folier here trading pieces. It's a normal maneuvering theme in this kind of structure where black, if black wasn't down a pawn, I would say this is a standard kind of pieces going through the E5 square. But in this position, there is an argument that he shouldn't trade pieces at all, I think, on a practical level. So still, black has a little bit of compensation here. It's not a joke. Not sure that this is that easy for me. It's going to be a struggle, basically. We have to keep fighting. It's going to be a long game. We're only up a pawn, and I've got a few weaknesses in my position I want to be careful of. Probably queen D2, maybe B4, I was thinking, to secure the D4 square for my knight, possibly. Booker Smith says, hi, time for me to get some sleep. Maybe that was the problem. I think he said, what's that? How old are you? Yeah, it's a national secret, basically. You're going to have to research that on your on your own. No, this, it depends on what depends on which life you're talking about. Obviously, I'm on my second or third lifetime already. Yeah, I'm not exactly a kid anymore, but time goes quickly. I just shaved yesterday though. Nobody mentioned it. Usually I get some commentary on that. And b5 I don't really like for black. Why? Because he weakens c5, and because I was just talking about d4 as an outpost for my knight. So now he's making d4 an outpost for my knight permanently. I think that's a bad decision for black positionally. Kind of reactive move, b5, why? Black needs to come up with a concrete plan. b5 only helps me. It gives me this great sort of defensive outpost for my knight. There it is. Maybe he doesn't listen to the stream, which a lot of people don't do because maybe they feel it's more fair, you know, that they don't listen to my comments while they're playing. This is getting in the game. Trading queens is just terrible news for black. If I can trade queens. I also have a4 break, which I'm trying to do. So b5 was a disaster. Now if you like check the computer evaluation, it's probably just like massively in white's favor, more than a pawn up. I'm like a pawn up with positional kind of advantage. I could just take on c6 there. I don't know what's the difference, but they're both good. We can actually just play rook a6. But let's be greedy and take this pawn while the taking is good. Objectively, what should black do? Trade? No. He should avoid exchanges of pieces. He may have given up psychologically, and that's what happens. And everybody has a kind of breaking point, you know. Lonely Master's breaking point is definitely not a pawn down. You need to be like up more than that for him to give up. Fortuit Folier, maybe 2 pawns, kind of like he gives up after that. But I mean, everybody should try to have a really strong attitude about defending bad positions. I'm arguably better in bad positions than I am in good ones. I lose a lot of good positions and I save a lot of bad positions, and that's always been throughout my chess career, a kind of constant. So I don't give up easily. But I think the Fortuit Folier there, you know, you're down. It's a kind of blitz game. You're down a pawn. It's ugly, but look, play Queen e7. I mean, it's the only thing you can do to try to keep the game alive. The other option is to really give up. Rook e7. And now these pieces are kind of dead. So he dropped a pawn in the opening and he made a terrible positional mistake with b5. But I still don't think he should give up. But trading queens is kind of like giving up psychologically. I'm 2402, yeah. They say that I'm 43, but you can never be sure. I look younger than that, I think. I don't think that's accurate. I think that has to be a mistake in the FIDE website. I'm absolutely like 39, 38. 38, 39 maximum. Shan Shah. You're almost 20 years. I still use a trimmer for beard. Is that... I couldn't take it anymore. I know a lot of you guys are big fans of the beard, but I get bored of it after a while, so have to break your hearts. Now he's not giving up, but trading queens is just, it's a disaster when you're down material. Queen is the #1 piece for getting counterplay. In any kind of position where you're down material, keeping the queens on the board is really essential. Snatching a third pawn here. Three pawns up, and I already pre-calculated this. So we can defend with rook a5. You could even play d4 to protect the knight on b5, but it would open up the bishop on g6 and make my pawn structure very, how do I say, not fluid. I wanted to say influid. Is that a word? bigly. Yeah, okay. Now I let you resign 3 pawns down. But don't resign 2 pawns down. I would draw the line there. Okay, Hunt the King. Yesterday we had a game with them. We played twice before. So today is a weird openings theme. And White played c4. So what can we do to play something interesting against c4? If I could... Difficult to get unorthodox opening against c4. I could play f5. I could play... let's try to play something unusual a little bit later. See what we can come up with. I mean, e5 is clearly like the most critical move. A lot of computer engines will like say white is like worse by 0.1 after e5, but I think that's just a... If you don't let the computer engine run long enough. What was I gonna do here? So actually, let's play an old variation that I played a lot in the old days, back when I was alive during the dinosaur era. I was playing this in the 80s. That's how old I am. I'm so old. I was playing this move. Actually, you guys want to know, the first time I ever played this position was in the 80s, but I was white against Roman Gingiashvili. Somewhere around 1987 or 88. This is like my game against Roman Gingiashvili, where I was white in maybe 1988. That's how old I am. Bishop to b4 is a very interesting line. Knight d5 is the most thematic answer, not the only move. So my career in this position spans from like 1988 with white against Roman Gingiashvili. I played it against many players with black too, including Simon Williams, which was a very interesting draw back around 1990, 93, maybe 92. And even as recently as against Sam Shankland, I played white in one of these variations in recent times, around 2008, I want to say. So my career spans a 30-year period with Bishop b4, from Gingy to Shankland, 1988 to 2008. Playing both sides of this position. Bishop a5 is the old move that Gingy played, and that's one of the most fun variations, I think. Modern players, and including Joel Benjamin, a lot of people started playing Bishop e7, and Bishop c5 was the move played by Shankland against me, which has also been analyzed quite a bit. But this move is kind of a forgotten move, or not really well analyzed move. So I thought we were going to try this as something different. You know, just briefly analyzed. Probably there's games with it now, but I always just kind of thought that why not a5? If you play the Bogo Indian, positions are not that different. There are definitely games with this, although I haven't studied them. Alive with the Dinosaurs. Yeah, the b5 gambit. Okay, thank you, Drummus. There is an interesting line that would be good against the English to play. There's a gambit with b5, but I didn't think that white would cooperate, necessarily let me play that variation. If you play knight f3 and knight c3, we get a 4 knights type position. You can play b5. Pawn sacrifice. How does that work again? I have to play b5. I have to play e4 and then b5. Alright, that was an actual idea of mine, Drummus, to play that. I'm trying to remember who invented that gambit. I think it was a Spanish GM who was playing it quite a bit, but I can't remember now. Okay, so solid answer from Hunt the King. He played very logically here with b3. I like that. Looks like a very sensible way for white to play. Going to develop my pieces as well. So after all this prologue, we get to what is essentially a kind of relatively normal kind of chess position. I think a5 a good kind of side variation that not many people even know about. Gingy won a brilliant game against me in that first game he played in 1988. He like sacrificed a knight on g2 or something. I was only like 2100 or something. I was just stunned. He just was in. He was still in the peak of his form back in the late 80s. Very, very strong. So b3, knight f6. I later started playing this variation with black, with mixed results, honestly. But that time in like 1988, there really wasn't much established theory, and that's what made it very, very tempting to play with black, because not many, not a lot of information was available. It wasn't even like mentioned in the Encyclopedia of Chess Openings, I don't think. But this is a good recipe for white, I think, to play like b3, bishop b2. He's trying to play on the dark squares. I don't have a dark squared bishop, so it makes some sense, to really try to use this color complex where I don't have, the corresponding piece that can necessarily really, defend that color complex. A lot of similarity here with the Bogo Indian. Same theme for white oftentimes in the Bogo Indian. The bishop, will be a factor, a very important piece, trying to use the long diagonal. If it will open up, white might get really, really strong chances. But in the middle game, the god has placed the god has placed the knights, and they are in the center of board. So center of board, my knights, very strong. We want to play centrally, I think, and try to really caveman, me have control of center. Make sure these knights are worth their weight in gold, basically. I don't want to play passively and let white just own the position with fianchetto bishops. Want to get some strong kind of central control. Now e3. That looks dodgy to me. To use a phrase commonly used by those of you in the UK. Dodgy. It looks very dodgy to me. This e3, a lot of weak squares on the white squares. Almost think white has to take on d5 there, but can he take on d5? C takes d. Queen takes d5. You could play f3. And I have seen that done by some enterprising Spanish grandmaster that I mentioned earlier. Likes to play like such type positions with black, with like pawn takes pawn, queen takes pawn, f3 or f6. I'm just trying to remember who it was. Could it have been like Garcia Palermo? I don't know. Here I have a choice, a very pleasant choice. I mean, you could even take on c4. So we've got every possibility available here. Just castles. d4 looks good. Bishop e6 looks good. Pretty much can play anything. Bishop e6 a little bit having second thoughts about that, honestly. I felt like I should either play d4 or just ignore it and just castle. And somehow I decided on bishop e6, which is a developing move, but it's not clear where this piece really belongs, so I'm not really satisfied with this move. I just don't really know where that piece should be in this game. Do you remember every OTB game you've played? No, not at all. And in fact, I used to have a much better. There was a point where I almost remembered most of my games, but I've probably played like more than 2,000 tournament games. So it got to the point where one of two things started happening. Either my brain just got too cluttered, or I started having early onset kind of senility, which is a possibility. Lately, it's just harder and harder for me to recall stuff. I don't have the quick recall of information that I used to. But certain stuff just sticks with you. I mean, it's just big memories. This first time I played with Roman was a big memory for me. So it was playing against a strong GM. It possibly not the first time, but maybe the second time I played against him. But it still, it sticks out in your mind when it's a memory like that. Significant things we tend to remember. Hunt the king. But we've got way more development than white here. It's debatable. You know, I think I would have rather have kind of just hung out and seeing what he's going to do. D4. Very reasonable move in this situation. And he's got a French type position now. But at least his bishop can be kind of a little dead. And the second thing is the c4 pawn. I mean, he'd like to fianchetto over here, I guess, but is he going to be able to do that, you know, if he has to babysit the pawn on c4? So white has some issues yet. And then there's this final possibility he could take with the bishop on d4. But in that situation now, I'm wondering, should I take on c4 and then leave him with an isolated pawn? So this bishop on e6 is, again, kind of debatable. And now, it's so embarrassing to play like bishop g4 and move the same piece again. But it actually looks interesting. Bishop g4, I think he'd have to play bishop e2. And in the event of bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, rook e8, check, king f1 is not really a big problem for white. So I don't think I should really go for that, you know, trying to pin his knight type thing. We could play rook e8. I mean, this looks like a much more sensible approach. Poses white real problems. I think most of you guys would have found this. So white will have to come up with a more dramatic means of solving his problems. Do you feel d4 feels like the light squares would be good for black? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're basically playing for making the bad bishop on b2 bad. That's really a deep sentence. And yeah, knight e5 kind of almost felt forced for white there. So one thing that could happen is that the structure, we can break up his structure, but how? Okay, can I play knight takes c6, d takes c6? Then I have a problem. Knight e5, really nasty move. Maybe bishop g4. Does it work? Wow, maybe I have a problem here. Bishop g4, f3, he's just defending everything. Very annoying. D takes c. There's knight takes c6. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I have this. D takes c. D takes c. Knight takes c6 is probably good for me. So d takes c. Pawn takes pawn on c4. Then knight takes e5. And I'm probably better. Alright, I'm running out of time. We don't have a lot, but we might have a small advantage here. Looks like all of our pieces are working. I can't say the same for white. You know, these pieces are not in the game. Black is fully developed. Guys, Weird Wednesday, unusual opening stream, playing stuff I wouldn't normally play. Not too extreme, but interesting openings. Played bishop b4, c4, e5, knight c3, bishop b4. One of my favorite old variations that I rarely play nowadays. We have about 50 minutes left, so plenty of time for a number of games left. Got 3 challenges. Guys, don't forget my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. Today or tomorrow we're going to upload something new. Bishop to c4, I didn't talk about this. It's certainly viable. I guess I'm committed to doing something like bishop takes bishop, knight takes knight, and bishop takes c4, pawn takes, knight takes c5. Better knight against kind of dubious bishop. I'd like to find something better, but I don't see it. Could play knight d7, maybe. Trying to just win a pawn with knight d7. Alright, we'll do it. Maybe it was better to play the other way. Knight takes knight, queen takes queen, followed by king takes and knight g4. But either way, should win a pawn for me. You're not hunting my king. We're threatening f6. Ooh, he didn't listen. So some sort of Steinitzian piece sacrifice here for white. But no, I thought you had to play f4 probably to make that work. So we win a piece. More than I expected. He should just castle and give me a pawn. And as you guys know, my technique with with extra pawns is not quite what it should be. Yeah, so generous piece sacrifice by white. Not necessary. We used a lot of time in this game. It was 8-3 and we got through like 16 moves. Thank you for the game. WGM Alexandra is white. I decided to get some cereal instead. I see. So he could have just lost a pawn there with chances to defend. I don't know why not. Last time against Alexandra, I think I played Alekhine's defense. But today, let's try something different. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I played a6 against them. I don't recall. I'm going to play the Scandinavian, an old favorite of mine that I don't play much on the stream. Scandinavian with knight f6. This is almost not an unorthodox opening for me because I played it so much, but I rarely play it nowadays on the stream, so I thought we should maybe throw it out there. And, well, white played a very solid move now, knight f3. Here against, I think against Oliver Mihawk, who we talked about has an account on lichess, young Hungarian Grandmaster. Oli Mihawk, I think I played c5 against him in this position, which is a creative kind of way of playing. Let's try it. Something different, you know, that you don't really see very often. I managed to draw against Mihawk with this line. I think it was this position. I'm pretty sure. It's been a while ago. This is going back to like 2010 maybe, when I played with Mihawk. If I remember correctly. You're not going to find too many games in ye old database with this position. So, yeah, c4 probably what he played. Is it the right position? Yeah, it must have been this position. This must have been the game. C4 feels very natural. And then, excuse me, the position is a little like a Queen's Gambit accepted. I think. Sorry, guys. I'm a little choked up for some reason. Position similar to Queen's Gambit accepted. Some lines of Queen's Gambit accepted where black plays an early c5. For example, like d4, d5, c4, d takes c4, and then we'd have what? Knight f3. No, e4, for example. e4, c5. I suppose it can transpose to one of those lines directly. Now, at the time I played the game with Mihawk, I had analyzed this to some extent, but it was a long time ago, like 6 years ago, so I don't remember all the ins and outs of what I looked at. Just came to the conclusion it would surprise him, and I looked at a lot of variations with Engine and decided it was okay enough to like play it as a kind of surprise. But now I don't recall exactly what it was I was looking at. Bishop d6 or bishop e7. I'm not sure black has time for a6. I think that is a little bit too slow, probably. Bishop d6 feels more active. Blockading the pawn. Probably what I went with against Mihawk. But I can't remember. That's as far as I can remember. It's not an opening that I would really recommend as a solid choice for black, but something interesting. You can get a kind of unusual or new position that's not theory. I mean, maybe it transposes somehow to some variation of the Queen's Gambit accepted. This could actually transpose. We like think about it. Should b5 check. WGM Alexander obviously has access to the to the Mihawk game. Bishop d7 or knight d7. That actually is an important question as well. Bishop d7 feels more logical to try to trade pieces since I have less space. This very well might be a transposition to a Queen's Gambit accepted. Very possible this is. I don't know the Queen's Gambit accepted. Another opening that I thought about playing, kind of like the where we were talking about the Dutch, but I never actually got around to doing it. Not the most active defense. Okay, black's hope here is that long term, it's a kind of strategic idea that the pawn on d5 will become a weakness. If I can trade pieces into an ending, I'll be better because I have three connected like pawns as a sort of united structure on the queen side. White will have this isolated pawn. If I can just blockade it, ultimately black might get the better of it, and that's the sort of strategic conception. It's not like I'm just making random moves with zero concept. Black's thinking that hopefully this pawn, we can make this a weakness in the long run. Online Wiki says, if I challenge now, would I be in time or missed out yesterday? I think you're going to be late again. Yeah. It's real close, though. Yeah, I'm thinking, you're in the list. No, you might make it, yeah. I thought you were like after those three. So, King Wiki, you might make it, but I can't guarantee it. It really depends on how long the games are. You're right on the cutoff there. You're on the bubble, basically. Castles, and again, I can't remember my game with Ollie here. It's been too long ago. I don't remember if he played like Rook E1 or Bishop G5. I suffered a little bit in that game, but it wasn't like a big deal. I was a little bit worse, but I pretty easily managed to draw. It was a weird time for me, 2010. I wasn't really playing chess that seriously. I'm not even sure why I played in that tournament. It was a GM tournament here in Budapest. And maybe my last serious tournament for a long time. But I wasn't well prepared for most of my games. I was just kind of making stuff up. In fact, in one game against a FIDE master, I played e4 knight h6 and drew. I had a better position probably after like 20 moves, but I couldn't win in the knight h6 opening. That's something we haven't done, but I haven't gotten e4 too much. We definitely need to throw out the knight h6. And here today, I should have done it in this game. Yeah, I should have played knight h6 here. This is another invention of mine. That's about as weird as we're going to get. I had a chance to play this. Something I invented and called the... I invented it when I was sleeping or trying to fall asleep one night, so I called it the 3 a.m. variation. e4, d5, pawn takes pawn, knight h6. Okay, so bishop g5 and like knight e4 is a threat. Okay, well I don't necessarily want to weaken my king side. So let's try to like use logic to find the best move. Rook e8 seems like a good move to me. Theoretically, White would like to not exchange pieces, but it's a matter of losing time. If he has to play another move of the bishop to avoid exchanging pieces, he or she, I don't know. If you have to spend another move, it's not really worth it, you know. Black is a little more cramped, but... So I tend to think that black's pretty much okay here. A little bit passive, but... I guess I prefer to be white if I had to choose. This could even be the same position as my game with Mihawk. I don't remember exactly. Rook e1 threatening knight e4. I don't remember this tension in my game with Mihawk necessarily. This tension with the bishop on b5, the bishop on d7. I have the feeling he exchanged on d7 or something, because I just don't recall there being this kind of extended tension in the position as we have here. Rook takes e1. Check. I definitely played h6 at some point against Oliver. I ended up with double G pawns. I remember that. Rook takes e1. Queen takes e1. Bishop takes b5. Doesn't look very good. Could play h6. But then bishop takes and wins a piece. Alright, I'm running out of time. White seems to have got kind of upper hand here. Rook takes e1 check. Very, very logical play. H6, bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, bishop takes d7. H6 is probably a useful move. I can play g5 at some point. And certainly a6. I'll probably consider playing a6. I did notice that online wiki said, what about h6? I mean, g5 is an option. I'm not sure that white can sacrifice a piece here in this kind of position or not. I'm thinking about a6 next. Bishop takes d7, knight takes d7. Not sure if I really like that though. I don't recall how the game with Mihawk went. Bishop takes f6 is pretty risk-free. I thought bishop h4 is much more tense. Although white isn't in any danger here. I think that it's more rook d1. That's an interesting move. Just developing a piece here. We've got to watch the e8 square. So a6. I might be able to play king f8 at some point. But bishop takes b5, knight takes b5, knight a6. Bishop takes, knight a6. That knight on b5 is kind of a problematic piece. So I think I'm going to opt for this and try to play b5. White hasn't played a4. Knight e4 first. Yikes. Did I fall for some kind of trap or something? Not sure. Still black. Black looks fairly solid. Developing our pieces. It's kind of the fundamental plan here. Create this weakness and hopefully have the upper hand. King f8 would weaken h7, so I'm not sure about that. Could play b5. Although knight f6 looks pretty good actually. Putting pressure on d5, tying white down to that. This worked out, according to plan. I think white should have played bishop h4 because this sort of ending in the pawn becoming weak on d5 is basically what I wanted out of the opening. Now queen c3. Queen c3, I can just win a pawn here. Even if they pin me, I have rook d8. We have other ways of trying to play, I guess. The knight takes d5, queen b3. Okay, that's the idea. So I don't want to rush. Maybe b5. Knight e5 is tempting, but the knight is hard to maintain there. And then, wow. So knight h4, very aggressive move. I was thinking about that square a lot earlier as a danger for me. Not as much now. But it looks like white has fairly good chances here. I wouldn't say black's winning. Whoops. Forgot about that move. Kind of a problem. Yeah. I didn't want to forget about that move. Okay, now we've got to be careful. Queen b4. Afraid I'm going to have to play queen b4, queen c4. Hold on to my material. If queen d6, knight f5 is a big problem. And white kind of takes the initiative. Queen b4. Queen e4. Maybe queen e4. Staying on, dominating the knight, staying on this guy, g5. Oh, man. I think white had queen c6, that other move. Probably. This is also fine for white. White lost on time, white's like winning after d6. Maybe not winning, but it looks... Maybe I can win the pawn back. I'm fighting for a draw there, though. Yeah, very weird game. A lot of mistakes at the very end by both of us. Knight h4, interesting. Son of Anarchy. Yeah, the one thing about these weird openings that we're spending more time than we usually do in the opening in the first 20 minutes, and then the game seems to get really bad at the very end of time pressure in an early stage. One downside of the unusual openings day, queen b3 was against b7 at one point. All right, Son of Anarchy now. What can we play to mix it up a little bit against d4? Really no e4s. We've had a lot of d4. We played in c4. Last week I played a game with c5, I think. And we played the Dutch today. And what else can we do? Against d4 is a little more difficult to come up with something unusual. Let's play d5. Keep it straight up in the... We'll keep it straight up, and then we'll play something different here. So c4, what can we play? The Chigorin. Let's try the Chigorin defense. This is really, I think, an unorthodox opening. He played very solid e3. Okay, so e5. I guess e5. You can play a kind of Albin. I should have played the Albin, actually. Man, that would have been better to play the Albin counter gambit. We'll have to get into the swing of things here. It would have been more interesting to play the Albin. All right, my bad. We played a delayed Albin. It can still become kind of like an Albin. Yeah, I don't want to play like absurd openings. e4, knight h6 would be absurd, but it's kind of a favorite of mine, so I'm willing to play that. But something like h6, I'd rather develop a piece. Okay, so we go into what is, I guess, kind of a standard line against Son of Anarchy. This is considered to be one of white's most solid approaches against the Chigorin. e3 and then c takes d. If he took with the pawn on e5, I guess black can play d4 there and turn it into a sort of Albin type position. So bishop b4. I've never studied the Chigorin for black, and I have played against it many times. So a3. I think this is probably a move. Now, to me, I can draw upon all my experience playing the Nimzo Indian. This position is obviously similar to the Nimzo in a way with the pawns on a3, e3, c3, bishop on b4 takes c3. Much more common there, instead of a3, I think, is bishop d2. There is a lot of school of thought that says like the knight should go to e7. A lot of school of thought. I don't know how to rephrase this. There are different schools of thought. I mean, some people think the knight should go to e7. Some people think the knight should go to f6 in this kind of structure. So it's kind of hard to say. And c4 is always a threat with these pawns expanding. I've got to watch out. I mean, queen d6 is a good retreat square against the pawns, but he can play a4 and bishop a3 in some positions, which obviously would do a lot of damage. And that's maybe one of the reasons why knight e7 is considered to be a pretty viable development scheme for black. I think for one thing, it goes against that bishop a3, cutting into my diagonal and preventing me from castling in some lines. So let's look at like knight e7, c4. Where do I go with the queen there? Queen e6 loses a piece. You could play queen d7, queen d8, or queen d6 right away. Something to be said for queen d6 right away. Queen d6 right away, a4, maybe knight e7, bishop a3, and then some active move, queen f6 or queen g6. I'd rather spend the time now and get into a little bit of time pressure, guys, and familiarize myself with the position than just make a quick move and get a bad game. And I recommend all of you guys, if you find yourself in an unfamiliar position, take your time and get yourself grounded, and be willing to spend a lot of time on one move. And I'm talking about mostly in terms of playing in long games, tournament situations. So queen d6 right away. I could play knight f6, but then what do I do after c4? Queen d6. We could take on d4, but I don't really like doing that and fixing white's pawns toward the center. What happens if knight e7, c4? Queen d6. c5. The pawn just started like rolling uncontrollably. I guess there I would have queen e6. Alright, we got to do something. It's really up to white how he wants to conduct this game. There are many choices. I mean, your pieces have a lot of mobility. White has a superior mass of pawns in the center. If you study my favorite middle game book, the Uwe middle game series, dynamic and sort of static concepts, it's very important that Uwe talks a lot about central pawn majority and the power that white has there. You know, static. This 4-pawn majority in the center is very powerful. Okay, so Son of Our Anarchy played knight f3 pretty quickly, and I'm wondering if that, is best or not. I don't have too much time to think about it, but I think I should just castle here. Not really a big expert in a Chigorin, obviously, but I understand basically what I'm supposed to do. Bishop g4 was tempting, and Chigorin was a big believer in the power of the knights, not overestimating the two bishops, and he liked closed positions, outposts for the knights. So bishop g4 is a kind of thematic move in all variations of the Chigorin. I was a little bit worried about my b7 pawn, for one thing. What's going to protect that guy in the long term here? Now, e4. Well, e4 has got to be discussed. In fact, maybe I should have played it last move. I think it makes sense for black, to kind of close the position with the knights. Mouse frozen. So tactical variation here. Queen g5, knight takes e4, queen takes g2, bishop f3. Probably good for white. Can't play f5 because I lose a queen to bishop c4. And Son of Anarchy with 5 minutes against my 2 now. This is a newish account. We don't know anything about Son of Anarchy. Just kind of appeared one day. I'm not real thrilled with this position. Queen g5, knight takes e4, queen takes g2, bishop f3, queen g6. Seems like white is better there, although position is pretty unclear. I guess I'll try it. Not a big believer in this position, but I didn't see a better move. If I could have played f5, I would have been happy, but c4, I lose a queen, bishop c4. What other way do I have of like dodging the threat of c4? Perhaps something awkward like bishop f5 or queen f5 looks very, very weird to me. Blocking my f-pawn or just blocking my other pieces. And now Son of Anarchy played an interesting move here, rook g1. I'm going to defend my e4 pawn. It's a double-edged move. I guess he's just trying to solidify, the pawn and not launch into complications. I think that knight takes e4 was better there. Now bishop e2. This bishop is powerful long-term piece. No matter what diagonal I'm on, there's going to be danger. It doesn't matter if it's this diagonal. Although maybe I should have played bishop e6 there. Not really happy with this position. I find myself playing this sort of position much more often with white than with black. White has a massive advantage on time. Just playing solid moves. Don't really know what I'm supposed to do here. Perhaps knight a5. Not allowing pieces to come to c4. And starting a blockade procedure with like b6 and c5. I'm not a big fan of putting knights on the side of the board, but I think if you play the Chigorin, you have to be used to doing this kind of thing. It takes away these squares. It enables me to play c5. This was obviously white's plan, to castle queenside. I really don't mind sacrificing a pawn, I guess. Just instantly takes. I'm not really concerned about the pawns. Being down a pawn is not really relevant here. We do have to be careful of threats by white, but this square is relevant too. So white has some restrictions about what he can do. c4 absolutely best. I'm just gonna get in a lot of trouble. I've got to watch f7. Absolutely flawless play by white. Don't really know much about this player. He's played 24 games. We won both games against them, but that doesn't mean that we had a good position. It had very, very weird games. We were lost the first game and got lucky. The second game was a very, very dodgy position. We were a little bit lucky in both games against Son of Anarchy. Doesn't look like we're too lucky here. He's played extremely strong. Positional chess. This is a good move. Not because of structure, but because of opening up his bishop. Now g3 was very quiet. Basically a quiet move, the g3. I want to make sure my knight is protected, and then therefore if he does queen c3 or something. Plus we can try to open lines against white's king here. I feel like, okay, here I've got to move the queen. Looks like h6 is almost forced. g6 just loses more time. It looks like we're only have one more game after this. Arcs. I don't know, man. Will King Wiki get a game today? He's probably going to get bubbled again. Rook c8. Trying to put pressure on that pawn. Arcs is up next with 5-6. Poor King Wiki might get bubbled 2 days in a row. I'm doing my best, but can't guarantee you get a game. I thought that white played pretty conservatively in this game. Not really sure what I should do now. Could play like b5 at some point. Bishop takes and b5. Is that possible? Probably not. Yeah, we're giving up too much material here. Fortunately, no, I'm just going to resign. I didn't really have a good plan in this game. That was flawless. Flawless game by white. Yeah, I shouldn't have played the sacrifice on c4, but I was under terrible pressure there. And white was very, very generous. I mean, they could have played like very tactically with g4 instead of g3. Instead, they just played very cautiously with king b1, and it was good enough for white. So black was by no means okay in that position. Masterful play by white there. All right, let's play a little sharply with white e4. You haven't choice. What do you mean? You're just totally like checkmating me by force. I mean, there's no defense for black in that position. It's no move. I just have to resign. You haven't choice. Have a choice but to win by force or what? Arcs played the Alekhines defense. You played the whole game perfectly, Anarchy. Other games were interesting too, although you lost. In every case, you had a very promising position at some point. Now, knight d5, e6, this is unusual. Black's supposed to play d6. Somebody else did this against me recently, which is kind of funny, but I'm going to play c4. Son of Anarchy was Lonely Wolf? What's that? I was not happy with my position at any point out of the opening last game. He has everything there. I guess I should castle queenside instead of castling kingside. It just felt like it was a nightmare-like position for white. He could have played g4 and just tried to rip me like limb for limb, limb from limb, but instead played just very solidly, which was good enough for white to have a clear advantage. And I basically didn't have any moves. I sacrificed the piece, but if I didn't do anything, I'm just going to be strangled to death in that game. So, alright, so here we have a very weird position. We could play c5, closing it completely and trying to win a pawn. Well, c5, knight c4, b3 is probably good for white. We have c5, knight back to d7. It's super closed, but he can break the queen side with b6 maybe. This is bizarre. I mean, c5 feels like it's probably okay. I've got a lot of space, but black should have counterplay. So he's Lonely Wolf. But did Lonely Wolf play d4 with white? I don't remember Lonely Wolf playing d4. I thought he played e4. That's kind of weird. So I'm not really sure. I mean, white played the game like a d4 master. The other game, I was white. Okay, I don't really like people changing accounts, playing me with different accounts. But if you're going to be at least honest about it, that's a good step in the right direction. b6, and yeah, there's this counterplay. So I have to take, unless I have some sort of tactic with bishop b5 and c6. But I planned on like allowing this basically. In exchange for my central space, I've got to give something back. And ARX here chipping away at my center. We have some space advantage, and hopefully it's worth something. Though I don't think that white has that big an advantage here. Bishop e7 doesn't seem like the only choice. Tough position. I guess I can play rook e1 now. I really thought you should have played bishop a6 and or knight b4 instead of bishop e7. So now I can keep the pieces on the board with bishop b1. You always play d4 as Lonely Wolf? You don't understand takes on c4. I don't understand takes on c4. I had like 20 seconds left, and it looks like I'm getting the piece back, but I didn't have time to calculate. You had like 4 minutes, and I had less than 1, so I thought I'm just like playing b5 and winning a piece back. He doesn't understand takes on c4. If you have a suggestion of a good move for black in that position, let me know, okay? Because there probably wasn't one. I'm just strategically crushed by white's perfect play from the beginning. And you had even stronger continuations that you didn't play. Like g4. But, Lonely Wolf, huh? You play a little differently, I think. I don't remember such a positional style from Lonely Wolf. So you change style with changing name. Knight g5's interesting here. Can we migrate to the king side with our pieces, like knight e2, maybe knight f4 type of thing? Take c4, then push pawn immediately. the idea was to play b5, win the material back, but I mean, the problem was I didn't see that white could sacrifice their queen so effectively. And obviously if I had more time, that would be easy to see, but in Blitz I didn't realize I'm just like losing in all variations to the queen sacrifice. But I think that without that, I had no moves. I was down a pawn with brutal positional advantage for white, and didn't even have any good maneuvers or anything, so just completely crushed basically the entire game. I was lucky to make it that far, in my opinion. But that's what happens. You don't know a particular opening. I never played the Chigorin. Thought I'd give it a try, but it's not my thing. Obviously not my thing, man. Knight f4, heading for the king side, and I like the way black played this though. ARX. Really recalled the last one. What happened in that game? Blunders. But as far as I recall, the Lonely Wolf was much more tactical, like sacrificing pieces and stuff. Recall this really positional style he played in this game. Knight h5. Hovering about the black king here. But basically I couldn't defend last game. I felt my position was just lost. So I made a desperate try. Wasn't good. Yeah, we need a longer time control for these strange openings. Could do a 5-hour stream, but I don't think I have the stamina for that. When I see somebody with the Son of Anarchy there, I think they must be American, watching American TV. But wasn't Lonely Wolf from Poland or something? He was from Poland, I thought. Am I confusing him with someone else? Maybe I'm confusing two different players. Did we have two different players with the Wolf name? F5. Very desperate move. Am I confusing players, Saronche? Like, there was someone else? Was it Lonely Wolf was the one from Poland? Because that player was very tactical. Very fast, very tactical. Do you remember anybody else? This is like a positional player. Nimzovich. Control of e5. It's so weird, this knight on b4. I can't even bother to spend time to attack it. Even if I attack it, he can just take my rook on a1. Not sure whether we achieved anything, but it looks like we have some threats. Still not anything really knocking out black here. Maybe some kind of knight takes g7 sacrifice. You can't recall another name with wolf in it? Okay. It's weird. I thought there was maybe another one. Black gets a rook and white gets the game. Minerva. Can't really threaten, right? It's funny that Def Minerva said this. A8, A1, then the bishop would go down next. Yeah, we can never bother that or touch the knight on b4. It's like the untouchable piece on b4, which is very annoying. But now he took on h5. I think that makes my job a little easier. So it looks like basically black is forced in this position to try to play queen e8, then bishop g6. So Knight takes f6, takes h5. Knight f6 takes h5, not good. So you're getting material material loss here. Now knight b4 might be might be useful in this position to save you. That's mate in 2. I mean, knight d3. I thought knight takes d3. I'm also threatening bishop takes h6, but this is mate in 2. So ARX, you're almost hanging on there, but knight takes f6 just helps me. Knight takes h5. I'm gonna play the last game with King Wiki because he was hanging out. And all right, we're gonna go over time today, but I feel bad for him because he said he was here last time, last time too. So we'll play one extra game. Guitar player. Where is guitar player? I don't know. He hasn't been here too much lately. I think his account said he's from Utah. Now, e4, c5. What can we play against the Sicilian that's a little bit unusual? Well, this Smith-Morra is not something I'm really fond of. Could try the wing gambit. Let's go with the wing gambit. Yeah, everybody in the US. G6. It's a good move against A3, but I'm not sure it's a good move against B4. I like to play it against A3. Now, he's dropping a rook. Are you sure you want to do that? I do offer takebacks once a stream sometimes. Are you sure you want to take on B4 now and lose a piece? I don't really want to take this whole rook. I'm going to offer him the take back there. Maybe he's more tired than I am. How often do you play the Caro-Kann and Slav defense? If you play the, I don't play the Slav, but I do play the Caro-Kann from time to time. Although I never had any luck with it. Never really been successful with the Caro-Kann, either here or in tournament games. The Caro-Kann doesn't seem to be. King Wiki, what's up, man? I tried to offer him a take back, but he doesn't answer. Okay, here we go. We need one more take back though. You got to take back your move. C takes B, dropping a piece there. All right, now you have to find another move. I'm not gonna let you take back G6, but you can find a move here. Okay, knight F6 now. I don't know if I should take on C5. I guess I can take on C5. It kind of feels like losing the initiative a little bit, almost against the grain of this whole opening. What other idea will we have besides taking the pawn? I mean, bishop c4 and e6. Feels strange to play b4 and then take on c5. I know that it's probably a reasonable move, but somehow feels like going against the grain of what I'm trying to do here. Now bishop g7, and I may eventually regret not taking that pawn. Although e5 here, yeah, e5 here, knight h5. Not that clear. But let's try it. Things are definitely getting weird in this game. That's what we came here for, I guess. I don't know about this. I don't know about this. This is beyond weird. King Wiki, I didn't realize we'd never played before. Now black has the f4 square, so maybe that wasn't the best move. I had queen f3, but black just castles there. This is pretty crafty defense for black, honestly. Knight c6. Maybe we're going to go down in flames again. Why take back? Well, it's kind of absurd, isn't it? I mean, take on a whole rook on move 3 and win the game. It just seems like a waste of time, John Capone. That's my reason for a take back. I don't mind, you know, but it just really... I extended the stream one extra game so that I could like win in 3 moves, a whole rook. Seems kind of like a waste of time for everybody. That's why there's a take back. Normally I'm not giving out take backs all the time, but it's a little bit ridiculous, you know, to end the stream with an extra game that lasted 3 moves effectively. That's why. So g4 here, winning a piece. Let's do it. So King Wiki got his take back, and I think he had some chances there. I mean, f4. So here, I thought d6 and black really preventing g4 and breaking up my center. Even pawn takes pawn, and then g4 d5 would have been very interesting. But obviously, the way that black played this isn't good. Now d5. With 2 traps, you know, b takes c, queen b6 check, and obviously e takes d. So I just play bishop d3, and I'm going to win a piece, hopefully. If all goes according to plan. Still, black might have some kind of compensation. My king side's a little bit weakened. Yeah, I mean, I have said before I would grant 1 take back per stream, so it's not a kind of totally new concept for some of the beginners. So the 1 take back a stream, we could kind of go by that as well. Anyway, it's been a rough stream for me. I lost 2 games, but a lot of fun to play different positions, and we're over time here, but I enjoyed it. Knight takes f4. He gets 2 pawns for the piece here. This is not trivial. My favorite words this week. I kind of feel like this is the position where white could lose pretty easily because of the weakened king side. I played the f pawn and the g pawn forward. My queen side development is very slow here, so you got to really take care not to underestimate black's counter chances in this position. His king is safe. He has 2 pawns. I don't have a center. I mean, he has 2 pawns in the center. He has 2 pawns for the piece. I'm a little bit concerned. You know, now he plays bishop d7. That move might not even be that bad. It's such a hard pawn to protect. And what am I going to do? Like queen e2 and queen e2. I'm not even sure this is good. Now my bishop can't move. Rook c8 I'm not in love with. It's a totally natural move though. I've got to develop my pieces somehow. Now what? How do I develop my pieces here? c3, I guess knight a3, and then like c3, and eventually try to king wiki. Though we've never played this player before, so I don't know what to expect, actually. It says 1500, but that's based on what, like 5 games or something? 21 games. Queen g5 now. Knight h3. Just holding on to the material, but barely. It's not an easy position for white, despite being a piece up. Got a very, very disorganized sort of setup. No coordination. Pawns on c5 and e5 are weak. Queen back now to e7. Trying to hang on to the material, but and what? Bishop c2 and d3. Honestly, earlier I wanted to play bishop back to e2 and play d4, but he never allowed me to do that. And we've got this ridiculous formation of knight on h3, knight on a3, bishop on d3. Not my comfort zone again. The wing gambit, not my comfort zone. That's the idea today anyway. Have some fun, play some unusual positions. f6, very positional move as well. f6. And I've got to be careful, as I said. Now I'm kind of happy to trade here, though. Although I've got to be careful. Have some ideas tactically. It looks like we have a strong attack here. So rook f1. I may have problems with my knight on a3, which actually is a little difficult to defend. He didn't bite. He knows about that. This isn't good. He's already... If you're like, wouldn't you normally play queen b2 if you're like a piece down? But instead he plays queen g7. It's kind of surprising. Wow. Alright, so c3 here. What should I do? c3, like getting the piece back in the game. Actually, queen b2 like lost by force, you know, so he must have seen it. I mean, queen, I take the file, and I made him down the f file with knight g5, and it's game over. So King Wiki plays a weird brand of chess. He's pretty careless there in the first moves, but still had his chances, even a piece down. Now it looks like finally sort of getting him under control in this position. Making the extra piece tell. So here we go. Now knight d4. Our extra piece. I still feel like black has some kind of compensation. No, he trades. Definitely knight e5. You have to play knight e5. Trading is not the right idea there. You're down material. Do not trade. You had to play knight e5. And still I felt it was a little bit of work to win the game. But King Wiki positionally seems to have a good concept. Needs more practical experience. Don't trade pieces when you're down a piece. With 95, it's still some practical chances. Here. Black. Black's a clean piece down now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Pawn on e4 is pretty cramping, but he's losing everything now. So this was a weird game, honestly. I think that he had a lot of compensation. I don't know, like 1 minute I'm just up a piece, the next minute he has like 2 or 3 pawns for a piece, and I think, oh my god, I'm not even sure if I'm winning here. So I'm going to try to take this pawn. He might get one. And then the question, no, he hangs his queen. So tactics need to work on, King Wiki, but like positionally you had a good sense. So guys, that'll conclude our stream today. We're going to be back tomorrow on Thursday with some normal blitz and classical chess. Weird games today. I'm definitely learning not to play the Chigorin for black. So we learn and you guys learn. Nice games from Lonely Master and Son of Anarchy to beat me today. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Check out my YouTube videos on Video Chess Training on YouTube. Thanks everybody for joining me, and thanks to Jeroen who was quiet today, relatively quiet today. Thanks to you for moderating the stream and keeping the trolls at bay. See you guys later. Bye bye.